I never thought I'd be standing in a bathroom, heart pounding, staring down at dozens of tiny eyes blinking up at me from an abandoned toilet. It was one of those moments where you freeze, not out of fear, but because your brain can't quite make sense of what you're seeing. There, crammed into the corners of that filthy space, were frogs, so many of them. Wet, motionless, quiet, and even though I had no idea what to do yet, I knew I couldn't walk away. My name's Kimberly. I've always had a soft spot for animals, especially the ones most people don't notice. Those little lives we're told aren't worth much. Frogs, to many, are just background noise. But I've always seen them differently. There's something gentle in their stillness, something kind in the way they blink slowly at you like they're trying to understand you too. That's why, when I discovered what was happening in that building, it broke something inside me. These frogs weren't just squatting in a forgotten space. They were being targeted. A woman who lived nearby had made it her mission to get rid of them. At first, she tried chasing them out, then spraying them with whatever she had under her sink. But when that didn't work, she took it further. She started pouring bleach on them. Bleach. I remember standing there, the smell of chemicals still lingering in the air, and feeling my stomach twist. How could someone see a living creature and respond with violence? I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. So I grabbed a container, anything I could find, and started scooping them up. Carefully, gently, one by one. A friend helped me. We worked in silence mostly, just focused on getting them out. We brought them into the only place we had, a spare shower room at home. It wasn't much, but it was dry, safe, and chemical-free. 37 frogs. That's how many we saved that day. Some were still, their limbs stiff. Others trembled when touched. Most were coated in residue, likely from whatever household poisons had been dumped on them. I was terrified many wouldn't make it, but I had to try. The first few nights were the hardest. I barely slept. I stayed in that bathroom for hours, misting them with clean water, whispering to them, playing soft nature sounds just to give them something familiar. They weren't eating, so my grandpa and I went out looking for bugs, flipping over logs and digging in the dirt, just trying to find anything fresh and alive. It was like returning to childhood, except this time it mattered more. Then, something shifted. Slowly, they began to respond. They moved. They drank. One even made a tiny chirp in the middle of the night. And I cried. A stupid little noise that meant everything to me. It meant we were doing something right. Day by day, they grew stronger. Their skin looked healthier. Their legs were no longer limp. And soon they were hopping. That's when I realized they weren't just surviving. They were starting to trust me. A few of them would crawl over to me when I entered the room. Others would leap onto my arm or sit on my back when I bent down. I know it sounds strange, but it was funny. Comforting, even. These little beings, so easily discarded by others, were showing affection in their own quiet way. And they weren't all the same. People think frogs look identical, but spend enough time with them, and you see the differences. One would always hide under the same corner tile. Another would stack himself on top of two others like a king on a throne. They sang at night, soft and rhythmic. They even slept pressed up against each other. Cuddling, if you can believe it. I started to recognize them not just by their size or markings, but by their personalities. It was the weirdest, most wonderful little family I'd ever been part of. But I knew from the beginning this wouldn't be forever. As they grew stronger, I felt that bittersweet ache building in my chest. I was going to have to let them go. They didn't belong in a shower stall. They belonged outside, in the damp, wild places where frogs get to be frogs. Unafraid, unseen, and free. When the day came, I was quiet. I didn't speak much as I carried the containers out to the release site, just a few miles from where we found them. It was a lush area. Streams, shade, plenty of bugs. I opened the lids and one by one they hopped out, pausing for just a second before leaping forward into the wild. No hesitation, just freedom. I sat there long after they were gone, listening to the wind, the rustle of leaves, the distant croak of frogs I couldn't tell apart anymore. And I cried. Not out of sadness, not really. More like gratitude. Because those 37 frogs reminded me that every life, no matter how small, how fragile, matters. And when you save something that can't ask for help, that doesn't even know you're helping, it leaves a mark on your soul. I think about them often, and I would do it again, 100 times over. Because I truly believe this. Every animal has a soul. They all have a will to live, and they all deserve compassion. Just like us. Maybe even more so, because they can't ask for it. If you're watching this and feel even a flicker of what I felt during this journey, I hope you don't brush it off. There are sanctuaries, rescue organizations, and small community efforts everywhere that rely on people like you. People who care. Whether it's a donation, sharing a story, or just choosing to treat the creatures around you with a little more kindness, it matters. Those frogs didn't have names. They didn't need them. What they needed was safety and love, and someone who saw them not as pests, but as lives worth saving. I'm just grateful I got to be that person, even just once. And if you ever find yourself faced with a moment like that, a life in front of you, silent, helpless, please don't look away. Because compassion doesn't need to be big. Sometimes it's as small as a frog in a forgotten corner of the world, and someone brave enough to care.